Let the world outside your window dissolve into shadows. Settle deeper into your pillow and allow your mind to journey to the historic district of Savannah, Georgia, where Spanish moss drapes from ancient oak trees like nature's lace. The air here is thick with the scent of gardenias and the weight of old secrets. Our story unfolds in a stately 3-story Greek Revival home on East Jones Street. Its white columns stand tall against the deep green of its manicured garden. In a second-floor office, as the first pale light of dawn stains the sky peach and lavender, a woman named Grace Thorne sits awake. She is 58, but in this fragile morning light, she feels every one of those years. For 3 decades, she has been the quiet, steadfast heart of this home. Her husband, Robert Thorne, is still asleep down the hall, a handsome, silver-haired titan of Savannah real estate, known for his charm and his deals. Today, their only child, Benjamin, is to be married in their garden. Grace tells herself the tightness in her chest is just maternal nerves. She opens her laptop, the glow illuminating her composed, elegant face. She runs a small, highly respected accounting practice from this room, a world of ledgers and logic that has always been her sanctuary. It was her careful, unseen work that provided stability, paying for Benjamin's education and smoothing the edges of Robert's occasionally reckless financial ventures. But this morning, the columns of numbers blur. She has spent months orchestrating today's event. The ceremony will be under the colossal live oak in the rear garden, its limbs now adorned with thousands of tiny, delicate lights she tested over 3 painstaking evenings. Robert built a beautiful cedar arbor. Grace nurtured the new dawn roses that climb it, each bloom a soft pink promise. She chose the bone china, the vintage linens, the string quartet's playlist. For Benjamin, her thoughtful, gentle son, she wanted nothing less than a perfect beginning. For 30 years, Grace's love has been expressed in details, remembering allergies, balancing checkbooks, writing heartfelt notes, being the calm center. Robert was the dazzling force, the storyteller at parties, the charismatic negotiator. Lately, however, his light seemed to shine away from her. His phone, once left casually on counters, now stayed in his pocket. Business trips multiplied. When she'd gently inquire about the distance, he'd pull her into a brief, absent-minded hug. "Just the pressure of the new waterfront project, my love. You worry too much." She chose trust. After 30 years, you don't dismantle a shared life on intuition alone. The office door opened without a sound. Benjamin stood there, already dressed in casual trousers and a pressed shirt, holding 2 steaming mugs. At 25, he was a blend of his parents, his father's strong build and commanding height, his mother's intelligent, watchful hazel eyes. But this morning, those eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. "Mom," he said, his voice soft, "you've been up since 4. The wedding isn't for 10 hours. "I just want everything to be flawless for you, sweetheart," she replied, closing her laptop with a decisive click. "Dad's gone," Benjamin stated, his tone peculiarly flat. He handed her a mug. Note on the kitchen island said he had an emergency meeting with the florist about the Crawfords' corsages. The Crawfords were the family of his fiancée, Charlotte, old Savannah wealth, impeccable pedigree. A small, cold knot formed in Grace's stomach. That wasn't like Robert. He delegated details. "Mom," Benjamin began, perching on the edge of her massive oak desk, already looking like the little boy who'd sought solace there during thunderstorms. "Can I ask you something impossible?" "You can ask me anything." He took a deep, shaky breath. "Do you think Charlotte is marrying me for me?" The question hung in the quiet room, devastating in its simplicity. Charlotte Crawford was a vision, a Stanford-educated attorney with a razor-sharp mind and a smile that could disarm a jury. On paper, she was the ideal match, but Grace had noted the subtle things. how Charlotte's laughter at Benjamin's dry jokes always came a beat too late, how her eyes tracked Robert's movements at family dinners, the way she'd say, "Robert says," with an authority that bordered on reverence. "Why would you ask that today?" Grace deflected, her heart hammering. "I don't know, maybe it's pre-wedding insanity," he murmured, staring into his coffee. "But sometimes when we're with her family or his colleagues, I feel like a prop, the respectable, presentable groom in the background of Charlotte's brilliant future." He paused, his voice dropping to a pained whisper. "And lately, she's always in closed-door meetings with Dad. Mentoring, they call it. Estate planning. Their private jokes, their shared glances. It feels like a club I'm not in." Grace's blood seemed to chill in her veins. She wanted to give voice to her own observations, the way Robert knew Charlotte took her tea, Earl Grey, 1 sugar, steeped exactly 4 minutes, the appropriatorial hand he'd place on her shoulder, the expensive bottle of perfume, a business gift that smelled of Charlotte's signature scent. Instead, she reached across the desk and covered his hand with hers. "Wedding jitters can take monstrous forms, Ben. It's the biggest step of your life." "It's not jitters, Mom," he said, his eyes finally meeting hers, shining with a desperate conviction that shattered her. I think she's in love with him." Before the words could fully land, the door swung open. Robert filled the doorway, immaculate in a crisp blue shirt, his smile brilliant and practiced. "A clandestine strategy session?" he boomed, his voice too loud for the dawn-quiet house. "Big day, champ. You should be savoring this, not hiding in here." He turned his dazzling smile on Grace. "Darling, Charlotte just called. She'll be by around 10 to finalize the seating chart. Apparently, her great-aunt Bitsy is feuding with your cousin Marjorie over a long-dead poodle. We need to strategize." Benjamin's face closed off, becoming a polite mask. Of course, wouldn't want a poodle scandal overshadowing the day. The air grew dense, charged with unspoken accusations. As Robert left, whistling, Grace looked at her son's stoic profile and knew, with a mother's terrible certainty, that his fear was not imagination, it was a diagnosis. After they dispersed, a new emotion began to burn through Grace's shock, a cold, clear-headed fury. She canceled her mid-morning final walkthrough with the caterer. She cleared her schedule. For the first time in her life of orderly compliance, Grace Thorne decided to investigate. The next 2 hours were an exquisite torture of performed normalcy. She arranged orchids, confirmed the valet parking, smiled at early arriving family. Every nerve was screaming. At 10 o'clock precisely, a low-slung, gunmetal gray Jaguar purred into the driveway. Charlotte emerged, a study in casual chic, linen trousers, a silk shell, her blonde hair a perfect twist. She moved toward the front door with the effortless ownership of one who expects welcome. From the kitchen window, Grace watched her enter. Then, moving on instinct, she slipped out the back French doors into the dewy garden. Feeling like a ghost in her own story, she crouched behind the massive, blooming azalea bushes that bordered the sunroom's floor-to-ceiling windows. Inside, Robert was already pouring 2 glasses of sherry. They stood close, too close, by the grand piano. His hand rested on the small of her back, not a guiding touch, but a claiming one. It lingered, his thumb making a slow, subtle arc. Grace's hands clenched, her short nails biting into her palms. This was the room where Benjamin had played his first halting scales on that piano. Rage, white and hot, surged through her. She started to rise, ready to storm in and shatter the elegant scene. Then she saw a movement reflected in the dark sheen of the window pane. Benjamin. He stood at the curve of the grand staircase, shrouded in the second-floor gloom, utterly still, watching them. The sight of him, a statue of silent devastation, froze her more completely than any fear. In the sunroom, the scene progressed. Charlotte said something, her head tilting back in laughter. Robert leaned in, whispering. Then, as if pulled by an invisible string, they came together. The kiss was not a chaste peck. It was deep, hungry, and agonizingly familiar. It spoke of private afternoons and stolen hours.
A red mist descended over Grace's vision. She moved to stand, to give voice to the roar building in her chest. A firm hand gripped her forearm. Benjamin. He had slipped out the side garden door and found her. His face was bloodless, but his eyes held a terrifying, lucid calm. "Mom, don't," he whispered, the words taut. "Not yet." "Benjamin, there—" "I know," he said, his voice chillingly steady. "I've known for weeks." They huddled together behind the fragrant blossoms, hidden from the betrayal unfolding mere feet away. "I didn't want to believe it," Benjamin whispered, the words pouring out in a pained rush. The financial seminars they attended together, the way her phone would light up with a text and she'd smile in that secret way. "I saw them by the fountain yesterday." He tucked her hair behind her ear. It was intimate, not fatherly. He pulled his phone from his pocket. His hands were steady, but his knuckles were white. "I hired someone last month after I saw them leaving the Gastonian Hotel. He told me he was at a closing in Hilton Head. She said she was at a spa." "A detective?" Grace breathed. "I needed proof, not just for me, for whatever came next." He handed her the phone. The gallery was a curated descent into hell. Time-stamped photos of Robert and Charlotte entering luxury boutique hotels on the outskirts of the city, blurry but clear shots through restaurant windows of them leaning across tables, hands intertwined. A sequence from a downtown parking garage showing Robert pressing Charlotte against his Mercedes, their embrace passionate and complete. 17 documented occasions. This wasn't a stumble, it was a parallel life, meticulously lived. "What is your plan?" Grace asked, her voice a hollow echo in the fragrant air. "We don't confront them now," Benjamin said, his gaze fixed on the couple now settling onto the sunroom sofa. "He'll gaslight you. He'll say you're menopausal, unstable. She'll cry and say you're a jealous, possessive mother trying to ruin her happiness. They'll spin it until we doubt our own eyes." He finally looked at her, his eyes those of a strategist surveying a battlefield. "We let the wedding proceed." "Proceed?" "We let them walk down that aisle," he clarified, a ruthless, unfamiliar edge honing his voice. "We let them stand in front of everyone they've ever wanted to impress, her society friends, his business partners, our whole family. And then, in that moment when they think they've won, we burn it all down, publicly, totally. We don't just stop a wedding, Mom. We make sure the lie they built is incinerated in front of them, leaving nothing but ashes and consequences." Grace looked through the glass. Robert was smiling, running a finger down Charlotte's cheek. She looked back at her son, at this fierce, wounded stranger he had become. The part of her that believed in forgiveness, in working through problems, in protecting the family facade at all costs, withered and died right there in the rich Savannah soil. "Tell me the plan." Tone shifts to calculated preparation. The evening before the wedding was a masterpiece of grotesque theater. Robert was ebullient, practicing his father of the groom speech, full of pompous advice and proud tears. Grace smiled, nodded, and poured wine, her mind a million miles away. Later, in her locked office, she made the call she never imagined making. Her younger sister, Diana, answered on the first ring. A former forensic accountant with the FBI, now running her own discreet investigative firm in Atlanta, Diana was brilliance and bluntness personified. "Di, it's Grace. I need you. It's catastrophic." She spilled the terrible story. The affair, the photos, Benjamin's devastation, their planned intervention. Diana listened, her silence heavy. When Grace finished, Diana's sigh was like wind through a graveyard. "Grace, I'm so sorry, but I'm not surprised. I've seen the way he looks at that girl. It's been obvious to anyone looking from the outside." She paused. "But listen to me, if this is what you're seeing on the surface, the roots are rot. Let me look, officially. Give me 24 hours.
Grace gave her access to everything she could: digital files, shared account passwords. Diana worked through the night. What she delivered the next morning in a secured digital file was not just evidence of an affair, it was the blueprint of a double life. First, the finances. Robert had been systematically looting their joint assets. He'd taken out a second mortgage on their Savannah home without her signature,
a forgery so skilled even Grace had to squint to see the difference. He'd liquidated stocks from their shared investment portfolio, moving the money through a series of shell corporations with names like Magnolia Holdings and Peachtree Trust. Over $150,000 gone. The paper trail led to luxury hotel bills, diamond earrings from Levy's, a lease on a Buckhead apartment Charlotte used as a study retreat. But the true seismic shock was yet to come. Diana, following the money, found a consistent, automated monthly payment going out for 16 years, always on the 3rd of the month, always to a bank account in Charleston, South Carolina, under the name Natalie Whitaker. "Who is Natalie Whitaker?" Grace asked, her voice thin over the phone. "She was Natalie Briggs," Diana said quietly. "She worked as a junior marketing associate at Robert's first development firm in Charleston. She left abruptly about 16 years and 9 months ago." The timeline landed with the force of a physical blow. Diana, I drove to Charleston yesterday," Diana continued, her voice gentle but relentless. "I met her. She's a kindergarten teacher. She has a daughter, Lily. She's 16. Grace, she has Robert's eyes, his exact smile. I took a risk. I got a sample for a discrete, non-legal DNA comparison. A file appeared on Grace's screen. The results? Probability of paternity, 99.98%. Grace's world didn't crack. It vaporized. 16 years. A secret daughter. A parallel family supported by her labor, her prudence. Every business trip to Charleston, every unexplained withdrawal, every moment of emotional absence over the last decade and a half rearranged itself into a monstrous, coherent picture. And Charlotte's corruption was yet another layer. Diana had discovered Charlotte wasn't just a willing mistress, she was a criminal. Using her position at the law firm, she had been fabricating client expenses and siphoning funds into an offshore account, over $300,000. Some of that money had been loaned to Robert for his failing waterfront project, creating a sick, symbiotic circle of deceit and theft. Armed with this horrific, comprehensive dossier, Grace and Benjamin refined their plan. Diana would pose as an additional wedding videographer. She had the technical skill to hijack the large digital display meant for the sentimental slideshow. The ceremony would proceed exactly as scheduled, and at the ordained moment, the screen would tell a different story. The afternoon of the wedding was Savannah perfect. A gentle breeze carried the scent of jasmine. The garden was a vision of white linen, crystal, and fragrant blooms. 250 of Savannah's most prominent citizens mingled under the dappled light of the live oak. Grace took her seat in the front row, a picture of serene elegance in a pale blue silk dress. In her small, beaded clutch lay a single, heavy envelope, the divorce papers, drawn up by an attorney Diana recommended, already signed and notarized. Robert sat beside her, radiating patriarchal pride, squeezing her hand. She let him. Charlotte appeared at the end of the rose-petal-strewn aisle. She was a breathtaking vision in heirloom lace, her smile radiant. As she passed, her eyes flickered to Robert. The glance they shared was not one of patriarchal pride or familial welcome. It was a spark of intimate, triumphant conspiracy. They believed they had won. Benjamin stood stoically at the arbor, his face a calm mask. When Charlotte took her place beside him, he didn't smile. He simply looked out at the crowd, his gaze finding Grace's. He gave one slow, deliberate nod. The officiant, an old family friend, began the ceremony. The words about love, honor, and faithfulness seemed to curdle in the sweet air. When he reached the ancient, pivotal question, if anyone present can show just cause why these two may not be lawfully joined together, let them speak now or forever hold their peace, a profound, anticipatory silence blanketed the garden. Grace stood. The collective gasp from the crowd was audible. A rustle of confusion swept through the rows like a sudden wind. Robert's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. "Grace, for God's sake, sit down," he hissed, his smile strained. "You're making a scene." She pulled her arm from his grasp with a firm, deliberate motion. She turned to face the crowd, her voice clear and resonant, carrying to the very back row. "Reverend Michaels asked for just cause. I believe I have it." She raised a small, sleek remote in her hand and pressed the single button. The massive digital display behind the altar flickered to life, but instead of a childhood photo of Benjamin, it displayed the devastating high-definition image of Robert and Charlotte locked in their passionate kiss in the sunroom, captured from Grace's hidden vantage point just the day before. The garden erupted. Gasps, shouts, chairs scraping. Charlotte's hand flew to her mouth. Robert shot to his feet, his face mottled purple. "This is insane! That's a fake, a sick fabrication!" he roared. The screen changed, becoming a rapid-fire montage of Diana's evidence: the hotel timestamps, the restaurant intimacies, the parking garage embrace. Then it shifted to financial documents: the forged mortgage papers, the bank transfers, the receipt for the $25,000 diamond earrings. "My husband," Grace announced, her voice cutting through the din, "has not only betrayed our son with his fiancée, but he has also been systematically stealing from our family to fund this affair for months." But the coup de grace was yet to come. The screen went black for a second, then displayed the DNA report. The words "probability of paternity 99.98% were blown up, stark and undeniable. Below it appeared a school portrait of a smiling, dark-haired teenage girl with familiar, soulful eyes. "This," Grace said, her voice trembling now, not with fear, but with the weight of 16 years of hidden truth, "is Lily Whitaker, Robert's daughter, a child he has hidden from me and from his son for her entire life. This betrayal did not begin with Charlotte. It is the foundation upon which he has built his secret life." The silence that followed was absolute, profound, and deafening. It was the sound of a community's perception shattering. Then chaos exploded. Charlotte swayed, her knees buckling, and she collapsed onto the grass in a heap of silk and lace. Her mother screamed. Robert stood frozen, his arrogance replaced by the stark, naked terror of a man who has seen his entire world obliterated in an instant.
He turned and ran, shoving past gawking guests, knocking over a towering floral arrangement. He didn't get far. Diana, looking utterly professional in a black blazer, stepped from behind the large azalea bush, the same one that had hidden Grace. As Robert sprinted past, she neatly extended her foot. He went down hard, sprawling across the manicured lawn. "Leaving so soon, Robert?" she asked, her voice cool. At that moment, two plainclothes detectives from the Savannah Chatham Metro Fraud Division, accompanied by a uniformed officer, walked calmly down the center aisle. They went not to Robert, but to where Charlotte was being helped up, sobbing hysterically. "Charlotte Crawford," the lead detective said, his voice carrying, "we have a warrant for your arrest on multiple counts of wire fraud, embezzlement, and forgery." The metallic click of the handcuffs was the final, definitive note in the symphony of ruin. As Charlotte was led away, past her stunned, horrified parents, and Robert was detained for questioning regarding fraud and forgery, the perfect wedding dissolved into a scene of medieval public shaming. Guests fled, phones recording. The string quartet sat frozen, their bows still. Benjamin walked to his mother's side and put a solid arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, the adrenaline draining away, leaving her hollow and shaking. "It's over," he whispered into her hair. "It's finally over." The weeks and months that followed were a painful, public, but necessary unraveling. The story was the scandal of Savannah society for a season. Grace stopped reading the local paper. She let Diana and her lawyer handle the storm. The legal outcomes were severe. Robert, facing incontrovertible evidence of forgery and fraud, agreed to a swift divorce with a settlement that heavily favored Grace, including the full ownership of their Savannah home and the majority of their remaining liquid assets. It was not vindication, it was restitution. His reputation was destroyed, his business collapsed. Charlotte, confronted with the mountain of evidence Diana had provided to authorities, took a plea deal.
She was sentenced to 3 years in a federal prison and was permanently disbarred. The Crawford name was irrevocably tarnished. But the most complex and delicate aftermath involved Lily. A week after the wedding, Grace received a handwritten letter from Natalie Whitaker. It was brief, dignified, and filled with a sadness that mirrored her own. She apologized for her part in the long deception, explained that Robert had promised marriage, then withdrawal, then financial support as a silent partner in Lily's life. She asked tentatively if Lily might be allowed to know her brother. Grace and Benjamin discussed it for hours. The girl was an innocent in all of this. She was also Benjamin's flesh and blood. They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe on Tybee Island. The meeting was painfully awkward at first. Natalie was nervous and protective. Lily, 16 and acutely aware of the drama, was shy and watchful. But she had Robert's easy smile and Benjamin's thoughtful eyes. Seeing them side by side, the sibling resemblance was undeniable, and to Grace's surprise, oddly beautiful. Benjamin broke the ice, asking Lily about school, about music. Slowly, a connection sparked. Grace, watching them, felt the sharp edges of her anger toward Robert soften slightly. This girl was not the betrayal, she was its most poignant consequence. Over the following year, a new, fragile family structure began to form. Benjamin and Lily developed a genuine bond. He helped her with college applications. She teased him about his taste in music. Grace, initially reserved, found herself drawn to Lily's quiet intelligence and resilience. She became, in a complicated, heartfelt way, a sort of guardian aunt figure. The love that grew was not born of obligation, but of choice and shared history, not with Robert, but in spite of him. Grace sold the massive Jones Street house, its rooms too full of ghosts. She bought a beautiful, sun-filled loft apartment in a converted cotton warehouse on River Street, with views of the passing ships. Her accounting practice, after a brief dip, flourished anew. Clients respected her integrity and her quiet strength. Benjamin, after months of therapy to process the trauma of betrayal, left his unfulfilling job in finance. He returned to his first love, enrolling in a prestigious landscape architecture program. He was designing healing gardens, spaces of peace and growth. He began dating a warm, funny museum curator who loved him for his gentle steadiness, not his family's name. One autumn evening, almost a year to the day after the garden reckoning, Robert came to her new door. He looked aged, diminished, the bluster utterly gone. He asked to talk. She let him in, but not into her life. He spoke of therapy, of regret, of finally understanding the profound damage of his narcissism. He apologized, to her, to Benjamin, for the secret daughter he failed, for the life he hollowed out. Grace listened. She saw his remorse was real. "I forgive you, Robert," she said finally, and she meant it. The anger had been a poison she'd chosen to stop drinking. Forgiveness isn't an invitation back, it's a release. For me, we share a child and a grandchild in spirit with Lily. We can be civil, but we will never be us again. He nodded, tears in his eyes, and left. Grace walked to her wall of windows, watching the lights of the Talmadge Bridge glitter on the dark water of the Savannah River. The family she had devoted her life to had been a beautiful, elaborate fiction. The family she had now was smaller, messier, woven from fractures and hard-won truths. It included a son finding his authentic path, a secret daughter welcomed into the light, and a sister who was a loyal ally. It was built not on comfortable lies, but on the solid, if sometimes painful, ground of reality. She was no longer Mrs. Robert Thorne, the supportive wife. She was Grace Thorne, accountant, gardener, mother, survivor. And in the deep, quiet peace of that Savannah night, with the river flowing steadily towards the sea, she knew this honest, self-authored life was immeasurably more valuable than the perfect facade she had once tended so carefully. And so, as you drift into dreams, remember this: even the most beautiful garden can hide tangled, deep roots, but you possess the strength to uproot what is toxic and reseed with truth. The courage to face a devastating reality is the first step towards cultivating a life of authentic peace, a life where you are no longer a careful gardener tending someone else's illusion, but the sovereign of your own resilient, blooming truth. May your night be deep, your dreams gentle, and your heart anchored in its own unshakable strength. Good night.